Welcome to Hand and Heart DIY Studio, where handmade crafts are created slowly with care. They are made by hand, made with heart. If you like what you see, like and subscribe. Today we're going to be making a tic-tac-toe board and a multicolor mushroom. Let's get into it. We're going to start off with our 5 colors of mica powder in our resin, and I'm going to put a drop of each of these 2 colors in my little bowl over here to see if they will mix, to know if I needed to add any of the Elmer's glue or not. Elmer's glue will give it a thick consistency and hopefully keep it from mixing and keeping the colors separate. That's what I'm going for here. And this is where I will start adding in a dab of the Elmer's glue. Now I probably should have used a little bit more Elmer's glue than I did to keep them more separated, because in the end they did mix, but hindsight's always 20/20. Getting this Elmer's glue mixed in really good, and it thickens up a lot, so and if you notice in my mushroom lid, I have went ahead and pre-painted the mica powder inside. So now, as you see how thick it is, I'm going to layer it one color at a time. And I've kind of sped up this process a little bit, but I love to watch how the resin mixes and changes color. Although this is not what I was going for as far as it mixing and changing color, because if you see, I put the red in, then the blue, and then by the time it is in there, it turns purple. But I'm just going one by one, putting a little bit of each color in as I go to try to give it a layering effect. And I'm doing it slowly. This is sped up, but I'm doing it slowly so that way some of the bubbles are released as it reaches the top of the mold. Doing these resin pieces is so fun. Now that we've got the bottom done and I see that there's no bubbles, we're moving back on to the top piece. Now, as you see, I went ahead and pre-painted some white mica powder on our dots on the inside, and now I'm going to do the same thing to the lid that I did to the bottom, and just layering the colors one by one until we make it to the top. Now you're kind of your own designer here. When you're placing these resins inside of the molds, you can put them in any type of pattern that you wish. This one ended up being a little different than the bottom, but they still turned out great. last bit of the blue. The last bit of the green. Putting the last bit of the orange over here on the side, trying to get all the colors mixed in. Now I use a popsicle stick and kind of go around the edges just to make sure I get all of the air bubbles out. As you see, it kind of mixes up the resin a little bit. So now that I've got both the top and the bottom, I'm going to go through and see if there's any extra resin that needs to be put in to kind of level off the molds a little bit, making sure that we have a good fill. Now I did notice that the bottom of the mushroom was bright orange, so I went ahead and scraped as much blue as I possibly could out to kind of break it up a little bit. Kind of giving it a tie-dye effect is what I was going for. Something to kind of break up the colors. Now we're going to, after I finish this, we're going to go ahead and let them sit to cure, and we'll move on to our next piece. Now we're going to start on our tic-tac-toe board. Now I've taken some of my favorite colors. It is going to be a crimson red for the X's and an opal pearl for the white. And we're going to use these new molds that I have. And I'm just going through here, making sure that I have every cavity filled and kind of level or domed a little bit, so that way it gives it kind of a bubble appearance. Now this is kind of tedious. I have sped this up just a little bit, so that way you're not having to sit through the whole process. If you end up having too much resin, you just dip your popsicle stick in and pull a little dab out. It levels it out pretty nicely. Then you move on to the next one. Just going through here, filling all 5 of the X cavities. Again with the red resin. Once I get these X's done, we're moving on to the O's. I call them hugs. And we'll be using that white pearlescent for that one. Just in making sure I have the white well incorporated. I'll do the same as I did with the X's, just making sure to go through here, making sure that the mold is level and that the resin is all the way up to the top. And kind of domed a little bit to give them kind of a rounded appearance. Kind of using my popsicle stick a little bit just to get that extra. And once I finish with this last hug, we're going to move on to the tic-tac-toe board itself. Just topping these off a little bit. All right, I'm just going to put some resin down in any particular pattern that you choose, because it's going to turn out how it's going to turn out, the way that the resin wants to do it anyway. It's going to mix. It may mix. I put an X pattern here thinking that I could make like a tic-tac-toe kind of X. It didn't work out that way, so I was like, you know, I'll put a little bit of red here, a little bit of red here, and some over here, and maybe I'll end up with a white X. And I thought, you know, I still got a little bit of extra resin, so let me play around with it a little bit. So I try to get all of the red out that I possibly could. And I had a little bit of white left, but not enough to really do anything. So I was like, you know, I'll just add a little bit more white here. As you could see, the gold coming out in the pearl color. It's like, well, I'll put a dot here, and then let's see what I can come up with. And as I stated, it really doesn't matter the pattern that you put it in, because it's going to end up moving and kind of changing when you're curing it anyway. Then I thought, you know, I could go this way and make it look like hearts. Didn't really look like hearts, so I said, you know, I'll just go around the outside. Kind of give it a swirl pattern. I had a little bit of white left, so I just put a little bit or a dot in each of the corners, just to clear out my cup, and there wasn't enough for any extras. At the end of this video, I will do a fast forward of how the resin reacts to the colors in the heat up process. It's kind of mesmerizing, so check it out after the finished photos. Now that we've let everything wait and cure, here's what it looks like. I think the mushroom turned out very nice. The colors did blend. I didn't use enough of the Elmer's glue to kind of keep them separated, but I think it turned out beautiful. And here are the X's and O's. I love the color, and the gold just pops. Thank you for watching Hand and Heart DIY Studio. If you like what you see, please like, follow, and subscribe.